Okay, in this lesson we're going to take a look at how we're dealing with errors currently since we've switched from using the agent methods inside our components to using the async thunks in our Redux store. And let's give an example here. So I'm just going to go to one of our products. No problem and working fine. But if I try and browse to a product that doesn't exist and press return, then notice what happens. It's a disaster. Everything goes wrong, we crash our application completely, and we get this cannot read property ID of undefined. So what's happened here? And if we take a close look at the error, then we can see what case we're inside of our Redux store. Now this is a React error, and by the way, if you're slightly concerned about these type of errors being shown in a production browser, that's not going to happen, because whilst we're in development mode, then we're going to see this kind of error, which gives us lots of details. But if you click on this X, then you're going to see what another user sees in production mode, and they're just going to be seeing a loading spinner at this point. Still not brilliant though. And obviously we want to fix this error and prevent that from happening. And we want to see what's happening here. Now, if we look at the case we're inside of, we can see that we're in the case where it says fulfilled. That means our request was successful, and we got passed into the case that is now trying to insert a product into our product entities. But that's not possible because we didn't actually get a product back, because it doesn't exist, because it's product ID 122. So if we go back to our catalog slice and take a look at what we're doing for error handling, and currently we're not doing very much. Now, previously we were just catching errors and logging them out to the console, and as far as our application was concerned, we were handling the errors. We were catching them and handling them. Now, when it comes to these create async thunks, think of these as an outer function. And what's going on inside here is an inner function. Now we're catching the error inside the inner function, but we're not catching anything in the outer part of this function. So as far as this is concerned, even if we do go into our catch block, which we will be, our outer function thinks that the request has been fulfilled. So we need to prevent that from happening. And what we can get access to inside the arguments for the inner function, what we can pass to this is the thunk API. And let's do this. Let's add thunk API as a second argument that we have available from create async thunk. And instead of console.logging the error, what we're going to return from this is thunk API. And if we add a period, we'll see what options we have available. And the idea here is that inside our inner function, we're going to reject with value, and that means our whole function will be rejected rather than fulfilled. And that means we can deal with the problem that we had. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll reject with value, and we'll specify an object. So we'll pass in error as the title of the object, and then we can reject whatever value we want. Now we know that our error, when we get it back from our API, is going to be that problem details. And we can go inside our error that we're getting back, and we can set this to data and specify reject with value and error.data. Then inside our rejected case, where we're fetching our product and we're rejecting it, let's just add an action here as well, and we'll go inside the action. And let's just console.log the action to see what we get when we do this now. And let's just refresh the page. And this time what happens, we get the correct response for what we're doing here. We go to a not found. We say, oops, we couldn't find what you're looking for. And in the console log, from our catalog slice, we can see the problem detail. And inside the payload, we get the error, and that's the problem details. Now we won't do anything more to handle the errors because we've still got our interceptor handling the logic for what we want to happen. But now we're properly rejecting the error in this case. Let's take a look at another example and our catalog. And we'll need to do something to generate an error here. So let's head back to our code, and inside the agent.ts, what we'll do to test this is we'll just use one of our API errors, and instead of going to get the products, we'll just say we're going to go and get buggy and server-error, just temporarily, just so that we can see what happens when this fails. And let's go back and test. And if I just refresh this page, then what we get is this is a server error, but we immediately go on to our crashing of app, and it tells us it cannot convert undefined or null to object. What's happened once again is we've fell straight through into the fulfilled part of our Redux store instead of rejecting the error. So we've got the same problem, we're going to use the same technique to resolve it. So if we go up to our Thunk API, or create async Thunk, then inside here we don't actually have any parameters in this one. But we can't just use Thunk API, this still needs to be our second argument. So if we want a non-existent argument, we can just use the underscore there, which is equivalent to void, and then we can use the Thunk API as the second parameter. And then once again we can just return and say Thunk API, and we can use reject with value, and we're just going to do the same thing again, and we're going to pass in our error and then say error.data as the rejection value. Again, we don't need to do anything else because our interceptor in the Axios file is handling this for us, but we will log it out to the console just to do something with what we're returning from this. So in our rejected case, we'll just add the action as the second parameter, and we can just say console.log, and then we can specify action.payload in this case, and that's going to be the error that we're returning from our Thunk API. So let's go back and refresh that page, and I'm inside the server error, but I really want to be inside the catalog, and we can see now that obviously I'm just going straight to the catalog and straight back to the server error, but we can see inside the error that we're getting our error properties from our API, and that's being logged from our catalog slice as well. So we don't need to do anything else with this error now, we're handling it, and we can go and reset our application so that we do return the list of products again. So let's go back and let's fix the agent methods and just go back to returning the list of products instead. And we'll go back and we'll refresh the page and go back to the catalog, and we're back. We're loading our products once again. And just one more thing to clean up before we move on and take a look at our next one is just the loading indicator for updating the quantity here. It's broken because we just need to adjust the status flag inside there, and this is a mistake from earlier that I'm just correcting now. And we're using the add basket item async, and we need to make use of the status flag from the basket because this is where we're adding a product. So we want to check to see if this status, and let's just refresh our memory on the basket slice for what we're using here. When we're adding a product or removing a product, we want our status to be either pending add or pending remove, and this is a good option just to use status includes pending for that one. So we'll just go back to product details and inside the loading indicator, and obviously I got carried away earlier on with something because I've got pending remove item and the product ID. We don't need that in there, and let's go take a look. And if I update the quantity, now we get the loading indicator back, and that's what we're looking for. Perfect. Okay, in the next lesson, we'll take a look at the basket slice and handle make sure we're handling the errors in there correctly as well, just to finish off.